Let's begin. Welcome. Welcome to the official launch of the Balance the Power campaign. Il nous fait très grand plaisir de constater que vous avez pu prendre une pause dans vos journées bien remplies pour nous rejoindre aujourd'hui en si grand nombre. My name is Pam Kapoor. It has been an absolute honor to help shape and now lead this important campaign. As a consultant in strategic communications, stakeholder engagement, and facilitation, I strive to apply an intersectional feminist lens to everything I do. I hail from beautiful Treaty 4 territory and have been based in Ottawa-Gatineau on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabeg people for almost 25 years. I am delighted to co-host today's event with my friend Arzu.
Hi, everyone. I'm Arzu Najibzadeh, a longtime advocate for diverse women and gender people's civic engagement in Canadian politics. Before my current role as manager of Canadian programs at Oxfam Canada, I spent years speaking out against sexual violence as a barrier to women's participation in our civic institutions. And I also help deliver programs that help Black, Indigenous, and racialized women and girls redefine leadership. I am pleased to be your co-host today, and I'll also be moderating the panel later. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that I am joining you from Markham in Ontario, situated on traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat, Anishinaabe, Seneca, the Chippewa, and the current treaty holders, Mississaugas of the Credit people. I encourage you to learn about the history of the land and the people who have been its caretakers for centuries, and to stand in solidarity with Indigenous communities wherever you are. Now, let's quickly go over the language and accessibility features of today's live stream. This will be a bilingual event with content in both English and French. We are pleased to offer simultaneous interpretation in both of those languages. If you are joining us on our Zoom link, you can access either English or French audio by clicking on the globe icon at the bottom of your Zoom window. Turning into our live stream on Facebook will give you our bilingual event. If you would rather hear it either fully in English or fully in French, please click on the link we have just pasted in the comments below the live stream. It will take you directly to our Zoom room where interpretation is happening. We are grateful to be joined by sign interpreters Brooke and Monique, whose videos will be pinned to the corner of the screen throughout. Captions will also be auto-generated throughout the event on the bottom of your screen, although we unfortunately cannot guarantee its accuracy.
Sue, I'm sorry to interrupt. We had to move ASL and LSQ into Zoom. And so if you want to enjoy sign interpretation in either ASL or LSQ, please click on the Zoom link that we have provided under the live stream. Le contenu aujourd'hui alternera entre l'anglais et le français. Si vous nous rejoignez sur Zoom, vous pouvez accéder à la LSQ, ASL et l'audio en anglais ou en français en cliquant sur l'icône de globe en bas de votre fenêtre Zoom. Nos amis qui regardent le live stream sur Facebook, si vous préférez l'entendre en anglais ou tout en français, ou regarder la LSQ ou ASL, veuillez cliquer, s'il vous plaît, sur le lien que nous venons de coller dans les commentaires sous le live stream pour aller à notre salle Zoom où l'interprétation est disponible. Des sous-titres seront générés automatiquement en bas de votre écran, mais nous ne pouvons pas en garantir l'exactitude.
All right, now that we've got all of that out of the way, let's begin the program. I'd like to invite Sherry Graydon, CEO and Catalyst of Informed Opinions, and Gabrielle Brassat-Lecour, Director of Femme Experts, to set the stage of our panel with a brief review of the campaign we're all here for. This will be a bilingual presentation. Over to you, Sherry and Gabrielle.
Thank you, Arazu and Pam. Is Canada a beacon of democracy? We really like to think so, but we also know that for democracy to be genuine, all voices need to be included in decision-making. And the sad truth is that we lag 6 other countries around the world when it comes to women's representation in Parliament. We're not 20th or 30th, but as of last month, we're 62nd. And that's because less than a third of federal members of Parliament are women, and in some provinces, we're less than a quarter. And equity-deserving communities are even more chronically underrepresented. We really need to fix that. Because research clearly shows that decisions informed by diverse perspectives deliver better outcomes. Intersectionality is critical. Financial markets are more stable, workplaces are happier, businesses are more profitable, research is more reliable, healthcare is more effective. And let me just give you one concrete example of why that matters. I only learned this last year, but a Canadian scientist has found that for every male hockey player or quarterback suffering from a concussion, an astonishing 4,500 women are recovering from head injuries caused by intimate partner violence. 1 to 4,500. And the athletes, they're wearing helmets. This recent revelation has huge implications for how we treat and prevent concussions and how we allocate health resources. And it's only one example of what's missing currently in the way we govern and make decisions. We're developing policies that don't benefit from the unique insights and solutions of those who are chronically left out.
Les communautés les plus affectées par ces inégalités doivent faire partie de la prise de décision. La pandémie a accentué ces inégalités au sein de ces communautés et on peut aussi observer une montée de la haine dans la société en général, en plus d'observer des opinions de plus en plus polarisées dans l'espace public. Mais on voit aussi l'impact positif que la diversité peut avoir en politique et dans la vie des gens en général à travers des exemples concrets. Les marchés financiers sont plus stables, les lieux de travail sont plus heureux, la recherche et les soins de santé sont plus efficaces. Les enjeux sont considérables quand on a plus de diversité. Savez-vous quelle province a éliminé la pauvreté menstruelle et paye pour la contraception? Il s'agit de la Colombie-Britannique, qui compte aussi 53% des femmes au sein de son gouvernement. Ce n'est pas une coïncidence. La prise de décision est meilleure quand elle inclut un maximum de personnes issues d'une diversité riche et d'expériences de vie variées. C'est pour cette raison que Informed Opinions et son pendant francophone, Femmes Expertes, existe, pour accroître la voix des femmes et des identités de genre variées pour le bénéfice de tout le monde. Nous devons travailler à réduire l'écart entre le discours public et la politique, parce que nos gouvernements ne peuvent pas développer des politiques et des programmes qui répondent à nos besoins s'ils ne considèrent pas toutes les perspectives et les points de vue. À titre d'exemple, récemment, au Québec, un comité des sages a été mis en place au sein du gouvernement provincial afin d'étudier la question du genre. Mais aucune personne représentant la diversité de genre ne fait partie de ce comité. Pire, certains membres de ce comité ont même déjà tenu des propos transphobes dans le passé. Ceci est l'un des nombreux exemples qui ne fait aucun sens et c'est la raison pour laquelle nous devons lutter pour une meilleure représentation. Personne ne cite son code postal afin de s'identifier, mais pourtant, la représentation politique est encore fortement liée à la géographie. Mais ce n'est pas le cas partout. Des pays en Europe, en Afrique et en Amérique centrale ont réussi à changer leur système politique afin qu'il reflète la diversité de leur population. Le Canada doit travailler à faire la même chose.
That's why we're launching the Balance of Power today, Balance the Power today, because we need to mobilize in ways that will incentivize politicians, candidates, and party officials at every level to change politics for good. We are collaborating with dozens of organizations to leverage collective action. The groups we've consulted, the partners participating in today's panel, and those identified on our website are just the beginning. I'm guessing that every one of us, and we had hundreds registered to participate in this event, is part of a network capable of growing the campaign. Maybe you belong to a professional organization, a union, a book club. By adding those groups, your sports team, your choir to Balance the Power's website, you will multiply our impact and demonstrate to politicians that we cannot be ignored. This is how we build a movement. It's the only way for us to ensure that those with power will balance the power and change politics for good.
On appelle les politiciens à signer et à s'engager à prendre des actions concrètes pour accroître la diversité et la représentation des femmes et des communautés en quête d'équité au sein de nos organismes élus. Le site web de notre campagne peut vous aider à faire ça en faisant trois choses. Le site web comporte un outil très simple à utiliser qui permet d'écrire aux 3 élus de vos différents paliers en même temps, c'est-à-dire les élus fédéraux, provinciaux et municipaux, afin de leur faire savoir que vous attendez à ce qu'ils signent un engagement concret pour une meilleure représentation. Vous pouvez aussi utiliser notre boîte à outils pour diffuser la campagne dans vos différents réseaux et vos communautés. Vous pouvez nous contacter pour y avoir accès. Elle inclut une autre boîte à outils spécifiquement pour les réseaux sociaux, une présentation PowerPoint, des vidéos et plusieurs autres outils. Et enfin, vous pouvez vous inscrire pour recevoir nos mises à jour sur la campagne et les événements qui se rattachent sur le site web de la campagne. Nous allons amplifier et enrichir tout ce que vous faites en faisant des approches politiques stratégiques. Plus vous mobilisez vous-même des gens, plus nous aurons un impact réel de changement.
Change doesn't just happen. We know that. People make change happen. Women, Black, Indigenous, 2S, LGBTQ people have all had to march in the streets to be able to vote, to own instead of be someone else's property, to affirm their land treaties, to be afforded basic human rights. And clearly, we're not done yet. So many people are still being left out of the decisions being made. That's fundamentally undemocratic. It's why our call to action is resonating and we're generating the momentum that we are. And your engagement is critical to making change happen. Thank you so much for being here.
All right. Thank you, Sherry and Gabrielle, for this helpful context and inspiration for our panel. Now we're going to invite our esteemed guests to please open their video cameras while we introduce them to all of our amazing participants. First up, we are pleased to welcome Senator Donna Dasco. She has worn many hats over the years and over her impressive career, garnering respect for her achievements as a pollster, a media commentator, and private sector business leader. A long-standing passion for increasing women's representation led Donna to co-found and once chair Equal Voice. She co-founded the Campaign for an Equal Senate for Canada and also works with the National Democratic Institute on issues related to women in politics internationally.
Lynn Nizigama est devenue PDG de YWCA Canada l'année dernière. Une dirigeante dynamique possédant une vaste expérience professionnelle auprès de groupes méritant l'équité, sa carrière lui a inculqué une compréhension approfondie des enjeux touchant les communautés francophones et multilingues, ainsi que les communautés noires, autochtones et de couleur.
Thank you. Merci. Merci, Pam.
Chi Wen has spent her entire career pursuing solutions to community challenges with leading local and national organizations. Before taking on the role of executive director at Equal Voice, Chi spent 20 years working in the social innovation sector. When it comes to the issue of women in politics, Chi brings firsthand experience as a former provincial candidate in Ontario.
Passionnée par la justice de genre, Anu Dugal a dirigé d'importantes initiatives politiques et de plaidoyer pendant 17 ans à la Fondation canadienne des femmes. Elle est aussi présidente du Conseil des Montréalaises, un groupe de bénévoles qui fait des recherches et des recommandations à l'administration municipale sur les enjeux comme l'itinérance, le transport, le logement et la sécurité des femmes.
Carrie Graydon has worked in and around media for 3 decades as a columnist, press secretary to a premier, and advocate for amplifying women's voices. She is the CEO and the catalyst of Informed Opinions, the charitable social enterprise behind the Balance the Power campaign, which she has led for 15 years. All right, so Pam and I will pose 2 questions each to panelists over around half an hour. During this time, please feel free to put any questions that spark for you in the Zoom chat or as a comment on the Facebook live stream. Our team will be watching for those and feeding those to us as we get closer to the end of the panel.
Oui. Pendant le panel, s'il vous plaît, n'hésitez pas à poser vos questions dans le chat de Zoom ou dans un commentaire sur Facebook. Nous aurons le temps d'en aborder quelques-uns un peu plus tard, après le panel.
All right, let's begin. Chi, as a former candidate and the ED of Equal Voice, can you please reflect on what it takes for our civic institutions and the general public to work hand in hand and meaningfully support women in politics?
Thanks, Arzu, and thanks everyone for joining in for this conversation. I think it's a really important and amazing opportunity to think about the role of women and gender diverse folks in political leadership. At Equal Voice, we do the work of making sure that women have the skills and the resources, as well as staying in politics. So we do a whole host of things, including systemic change work, campaign schools and education work, and have been doing that for about 20 years with the intention of seeing gender balance in our system. As a former candidate, so someone who's knocked on doors and lived through that experience, there are a lot of things in the system that we can be doing differently and better to support individuals who step up, but it's actually an invitation to all of us to demand more, have more, expect more, and live into and make our political system better. Our democracy is at its best when we all take up space and get engaged in it. And it's a hard ask when many of us are being pulled in multiple directions. We may have caregiving responsibilities, we may have other pressure points in our life, but the work of politics is part of our everyday, and it's something that I think we can all have an impact on. And that's why we want to see different kinds of leadership in our political space. So when I think about the opportunities, it's really about reflecting back to Canadians the lived experience, the range of expertise that we know can make our country even stronger. And by ensuring that there are more women and gender diverse folks at the table, I think that's how we get there. So, our work, getting women the skills, supporting them, making sure that they're well funded and supported is part of the mix of how we step into the space. And we do it across party lines because there's space in every party to grow and be stronger in this space.
Thank you for that, Chi. Anu, une question pour toi. Nous sommes tous ici parce que nous savons que le leadership des femmes contribue à un changement positif. Pourquoi est-ce important que nos instances dirigeantes prennent des mesures significatives pour soutenir notre leadership.
Merci beaucoup, Pam. Bonjour tout le monde. Je suis avec vous. Je suis à Montréal aujourd'hui, les territoires traditionnels des Kanien'kehá:ka et des peuples Anishinaabe. Je suis très contente d'être avec vous aujourd'hui aussi. Je pense premièrement, il est important que les instances prennent des mesures pour soutenir le leadership des femmes, pour vraiment souligner la nécessité d'une approche analytique, des processus décisionnels réfléchis qui va amener à des politiques intersectionnelles et féministes. Alors, c'est un processus de, oui, engagement, mais éventuellement de changement de système qu'on souhaite voir avec cette réalité. Comme ça, je suis d'avis que les politiques euh, euh, qu'on va produire, que les instances décisionnelles vont créer, prennent en compte les expériences des femmes et des personnes de divers genres, en particulier celles et ceux qui font face à des obstacles combinés qui limitent leur accès aux ressources ou qui vont empêcher leur participation à la prise de décision. Je pense que que le leadership soit partisan, politique, civique, communautaire, il ne s'exerce pas en vase clos. Il représente toujours une combinaison de compétences, de passions, de besoins et d'occasions qui sont déterminées par l'expérience et les circonstances de chacune d'entre nous. Alors, la façon de soutenir le leadership dans toutes ses formes va contribuer à créer des résultats plus équitables et plus inclusifs pour l'ensemble de la société. Je pense que c'est aussi important de nommer que souvent, dans les communautés racisées, c'est souvent les forces et le soutien de la communauté qui sont au cœur de leur façon de travailler. Et les femmes sont souvent en première ligne. Alors, même si on parle de leadership décisionnel dans le sens très organisationnel, dans la réalité, la défense des droits, l'organisation communautaire, l'entraide, ce sont des pratiques qui sont très bien établies par les communautés racisées, les communautés autochtones et noires, et ne sont pas nécessairement des activités politiques, sont des activités de survie. Et ça, c'est très important aussi de nommer, surtout pour les femmes trans, les femmes noires, les femmes qui vivent une violence persistante. Le fait de s'impliquer dans le leadership est un moyen d'autodéfense. Et c'est ça qu'on souhaite aussi voir dans les instances politiques, qu'ils nous voient de cette manière aussi. Je pense que c'est important de soutenir ça et que ça prendrait éventuellement des interventions multidimensionnelles, comme déjà on a nommé par les autres panélistes. Oui, c'est important de parler des changements que les instances politiques doivent faire, mais nous doivent investir toutes dans ces changements. Merci.
Thank you, Anu. I love the shout out to local grassroots, Black, Indigenous, racialized, trans leaders. We know that they truly do make the world go around. With that, I'm going to move to Senator Dasko. I know, again, you have such a depth of knowledge when it comes to the topic of women in politics, but today specifically, what do you think is the role of political parties in electing more women and gender diverse people and members of equity deserving groups to the House of Commons? And why is it up to political leaders to balance the power? Why is it that we're asking them to take action now?
Well, thank you, Arazu. And I'm just so happy to be here. I'm so delighted to be here. And I really want to thank Sherry Graydon who has shown incredible motivation and imagination in working on this and in trying to promote more women and diverse Canadians into politics. You've just done a tremendous job, Sherry, and I think I give you like huge credit for all of your efforts, and you're going to have some successes. And I'm really, really delighted to be here today to talk, and I thank all the panelists for being here too. Sherry, as you said earlier, Canada ranks 60, and of course, I've spent decades trying to get more women elected, doing whatever I could. I am one of the founders of Equal Voice. It was founded right here in this room over 20 years ago, and we have only progressed just this much in the 20 years since we all started this thing right here. We have a long way to go. 30.5% of the House of Commons is women. So let's talk a little bit about the parties. It's good to focus on the political parties because this is where we have to look. The parties are the gatekeepers of the system. They are the ones who decide who's going to be candidates and how they're going to pick their candidates. When we think about how do we get into this situation, or why aren't we doing better than the 30.5% of the parliament today, we can't blame the voters. It's not the voters. Voters are not voting against women. They're quite women. Canadians are quite happy to vote for men or women because they're voting for parties. So if parties have women as their candidates, people are going to vote for that party because that's the party they want to choose. So we can't blame the voters, and let's stop blaming women for the problems of women in politics. Let's stop that. I understand that there are many women who don't want to be in politics because, there are barriers, but still, women are stepping forward. I really want to make this point. 762 women ran for parliament in the last election in 2021. We could fill 2 parliaments with women only, just with the women that ran in the last election. 2 full parliaments of complete women, just women. So, and the numbers have gone up in every election. Women are running, they're stepping forward, and we have to do more there. But let's not just say, oh, well, women don't want to run. They do want to run, and let's try to get more of them there. So let me just, I don't want to take up more than my 3.5 minutes, but let me talk about the parties. We have to look to the parties. They are the gatekeepers to the system. People vote for parties. And the way it is now, and the research shows that parties are more likely to nominate women in non-winnable ridings. So there are a lot more women running in ridings where their party cannot win. And so I think I've concluded that we have to focus on the parties, that they can do more, they must do more. I acknowledge that most of Canada's political parties have increased the number of women candidates. Let's acknowledge that they have made some very good steps. It's not all bad news, but they have to nominate more women and they have to nominate more candidates with diverse backgrounds. And so I'm going to stop right there, but we have to look to the parties to do more. And I'm going to talk in a few minutes about a bill that I've actually put on the table, but I'll leave that for later. Thank you.
Yeah. Fantastic, Senator. Thank you so much for your hard work over all the years on this issue and the energy you're bringing to this launch today.
We've got lots more work to do, and I'm just so thrilled to see so many women that are motivated to keep this going and to move forward and to understand that we have a long way to go. And not just with women, but, well, diverse women. That's what we want as well, of course.
Well, speaking of the fact, it's a fact that women are running. We don't have a shortage of women who are willing to put their name on the ballot. I'll turn now with a question to Aline. Aline, nous savons que les obstacles ne disparaissent pas lorsque les femmes remportent les élections? Comment lutter contre la cyberviolence pour créer des environnements civiques sécuritaires?
Merci, merci Pam, et merci tout le monde qui a déjà contribué tellement. Je vous rejoins aujourd'hui du territoire du traité 13 à Toronto, où se trouve le bureau national de YWCA Canada. Et comme vous le savez, le YWCA ou la Y, c'est l'organisation la plus ancienne, la plus large, qui travaille pour faire avancer l'équité des genres. Et nous faisons ceci en faisant beaucoup de choses. Nous travaillons sur comment mettre fin à la violence faite aux femmes, la violence basée sur le genre, et puis à la provision, la fourniture de logements abordables, ainsi que les services de garde pour enfants, mais aussi le développement économique des femmes, mais également le leadership des jeunes. Donc, j'aimerais vraiment commencer par reconnaître que sur ce panel, nous parlons de comment non seulement nous voulons que les femmes prennent le risque et rentrent dans la course politique, mais aussi restent dans leur rôle politique. Nous avons vu beaucoup d'expériences qui montrent que il y a des femmes qui quittent la politique pour des raisons diverses. Et donc, nous voulons vraiment voir les femmes être engagées politiquement et participer dans la vie civique. Donc, ceci inclut aussi les forums en ligne. Ceci est intègre à la santé de notre démocratie. Donc, comment est-ce que nous devons faire cela? C'est en prenant des actions concrètes pour adresser la violence et la haine en ligne et la violence qui est facilitée par la technologie. Et puis, nous avons que ce genre de violence affecte les femmes de manière disproportionnée, surtout les femmes qui sont dans l'espace public, les politiciennes, les journalistes et les leaders communautaires. Et donc, comment nous faisons cela? Bon, on doit parler aux survivantes et aux survivants. Et à YWCA Canada, nous avons consulté les jeunes qui avaient fait face à la violence, des survivants et des survivantes de la haine en ligne dans notre projet qui s'appelait Bloquons la haine. Et elles nous ont dit ce qu'il fallait faire. Les histoires étaient vraiment poignantes et les recommandations très, très pertinentes. En gros, nous avons besoin de réponses féministes législatives pour mettre l'Internet, pour pouvoir rendre l'Internet sécuritaire. Pas juste pour les femmes et les personnes de genre diversifiés, mais aussi pour tout le monde, en fait. Et donc, il faut une réponse coordonnée, collective, de plusieurs secteurs, de plusieurs parties prenantes pour pouvoir répondre efficacement à la haine en ligne. Il y a 4 catégories que je vais vous laisser réfléchir là-dessus. D'abord, d'une part, il faut le plaidoyer et la sensibilisation. Et les jeunes que nous avons consultés nous ont dit qu'ils connaissent déjà comment prendre leur pouvoir pour changer tout cet environnement en ligne, pour contrecarrer la haine. Donc, c'est surtout en commençant par changer les narratives en ligne. Et ceci est vraiment une puissante tactique. Et ce que ça nous dit, c'est qu'il nous faut des ressources dédiées pour les formations, pour les femmes et les jeunes de genre diversifiés, pour acquérir des outils et des ressources afin de se protéger, mais aussi de protéger les autres, pour non seulement apprendre à comment avoir plus de littératie digitale, pour plus de sécurité, plus de résilience, mais aussi pour pouvoir intervenir en tant que, en anglais on dit bystander intervention, mais former les gens pour savoir ce qu'il faut faire en ligne quand on voit quelque chose qui ne va pas bien. Ça, c'est la première. La deuxième catégorie, c'est la reddition de comptes ou la responsabilisation. Je n'aime pas qu'on mette la responsabilisation de rendre les espaces sécuritaires seulement sur les personnes qui reçoivent cette haine et cette violence, mais il faut responsabiliser les plateformes sur lesquelles se passent ces conversations. Il faut qu'elles sachent qu'on a besoin de politiques et pratiques claires et transparentes pour prévenir la violence, intervenir et répondre à cette violence en ligne. Troisième, c'est le soutien. Nous avons besoin de plus de ressources allouées à des organismes communautaires, aux plateformes en ligne qui doivent prendre cette responsabilité, ainsi à tout le monde qui est ici, pour pouvoir aborder, développer des politiques, développer des pratiques qui sont plus sécuritaires, et surtout développer des nouvelles plateformes qui sont centrées sur le soin, sur la prise de soin et la responsabilisation. La dernière partie que je voudrais partager, c'est la législation. Donc, à YWCA Canada, nous soutenons vraiment les politiques qui donnent plus de responsabilisation autour de la haine en ligne et la violence en ligne. Les politiciens et les politiciennes ont beaucoup de pouvoir pour équilibrer la représentation, mais aussi ils ont un rôle à promouvoir la sécurité et aborder la haine en ligne à travers des solutions qui sont basées sur les droits de la personne. Merci.
Thank you so much, Aline. Now back to Sherry. What are some gains Canada has made on representation, and why are we still so far from to balance in diversity and representation in politics? You're on mute, Sherry.
I'm so sorry. As Chi mentioned, Equal Voice has been working really hard to seed change for more than 2 decades. Their advocacy and training programs and other organizations, some of whom are represented on this call, are also doing that work. And so we have seen gains. We have seen highly competent women from diverse backgrounds being in office, ministers and premiers, Marcy Ian, Lisa Raitt, Chrystia Freeland, Eva Ariak, Rachel Notley. And the data shows, and I think this was also mentioned by Pam, that women are people, Canadians are as likely to vote for women as men when they're run in winnable ridings. So we're not the obstacles ourselves. The case study happening in BC that Gabrielle mentioned, where the 53% government caucus is bringing in policies that reflect the realities of women's lives, funding birth control, funding ending period poverty, allowing women to test themselves for cervical cancer in their homes as opposed to going to the doctor's office. These demonstrated benefits of having more women in power are clearly evidence of progress. But we also know that officials of all genders are overwhelmingly white still. And at the rate we're going, and I think Equal Voices research has found this, it will take close to another century for us to achieve parliaments and legislatures that truly reflect the populations they serve. And the primary reason that Canada is so far behind, that we're 62nd, is because we have been complacent. While others have done deliberate prioritizing change at the systems level, we have accepted incremental progress. We have thought of ourselves as really progressive, but we actually haven't done anything about it. We've rested on our laurels. At the turn of the century, Canada was 20th in the world. We're now 62nd, and it's not because of what we've done, it's because of what everybody else has done and our willingness to just accept the status quo. And as we've discussed, because we know parties and politicians have the power to change their system, and our polling shows that Canadians understand that. Canadians know that politicians and parties and governments have the power to change it. We need to be demonstrating in really vocal ways that we expect them to act.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Chi, we've talked about cyber violence, we've talked about political parties. Sherry just talked about our kind of collective, kind of like apathy towards kind of making stronger action towards supporting women in politics. There's a lot going on, but to get really specific, what real structural changes can political parties and legislative bodies make to balance the power and truly, truly support marginalized people and women when they become candidates?
Thanks, Arzu. It's a big question, and I'm going to try and keep to my 3.5-minute time. Some of the work and research that we're undertaking at Equal Voice is to look at, the legislatures as workplaces. It's happening alongside some of the great work at the Samara Center for Democracy as well. So when we frame up the legislature as a workplace and think about the conditions of that work for elected officials, for staffers, for political staff, non-political staff, the range of folks who make that their workplace, there continues to be more that we can do to support that. So we've been doing work around understanding that sexual harassment supports in that system. We'll be hosting a webinar on that next month. We also have been doing work taking a look at how we can continue to modernize our legislatures. Our legislatures came from the Westminster system out of Britain. It has a colonial history, and it is time for us to think about a contemporary version of what that can look like. And so in the pandemic, we started playing around with different ways to imagine how you could do the work. So we're seeing hybrid now become a reality and a permanent approach in the federal context. It's going to help a lot of people do their job, men and women. So it's actually a benefit for everyone. So some of those structural pieces demonstrate that this is a place that can and should welcome different voices, different lived experiences in leadership. The other example that I think is really important is parental leave. So federally, the House of Commons finally passed one. They worked across party lines and did this kind of quietly, but now we're seeing more babies in Parliament, and that's a beautiful thing, and that's something we should be celebrating. So those kinds of structural changes are part of some of the solutions, but there continues to be other work. We want to continue to encourage the parties to think about their nomination processes, think about what resourcing candidates might need. We're going to be doing some work, we're doing a workshop tomorrow looking at financial barriers that candidates face, particularly women, women who have less access to capital and the resourcing. So all of these pieces are part of an ecosystem, and alongside the work of balance of power, I think it's really critical to be moving and thinking about the systems and our individual contributions that we can make. And so this is an important opportunity to think about the small and big ways to step into making politics everyday activity.
Really great ideas there, Chi. And Equal Voice has been a leader for a long time in advocating for us treating political spaces as workplaces. And I think that's a really important point today. Let's turn back to Anu. Anu, nous savons que les municipalités adoptent parfois des approches novatrices à l'engagement civique. Que peuvent-elles nous apprendre à d'autres niveaux politiques?
Merci beaucoup. Et encore une fois, merci aux co-panélistes. C'est vraiment une discussion très enrichissante pour moi. Mais d'abord, je vais mentionner la Fédération canadienne des municipalités qui avait créé un projet Femmes canadiens en politique locale. Je faisais partie du groupe consultatif. Ils avaient, par exemple, des objectifs concrets comme renforcer les compétences des femmes, surtout celles issues de divers horizons, dès qu'elles fonctionnent comme membres d'une instance, d'une municipalité, une membre élue. Premièrement, pour qu'elles se présentent, mais après même déjà en poste pour leur continuation dans ces instances politiques. Ça, c'est une partie très importante qu'on ait les capacités, mais deuxièmement, c'est important que l'environnement est favorable. Alors, ce même projet, lutter pour créer un environnement qui favoriserait à la fois le développement des carrières politiques des femmes élues et des personnes de divers champs, mais aussi la lutte contre la violence et le harcèlement sexiste qui existe à ce niveau. Et un partage de bonnes pratiques entre municipalités. Ça, c'est très important. Deuxièmement, je vais mentionner le Conseil des Montréalaises, qui est une instance assez particulière au Québec, même s'il y a des autres conseils qui commencent à se créer. L'idée, c'était créé en 2004 à partir des revendications de la part des groupes de femmes de Montréal pour avoir une voix féministe qui pourrait influencer et donner des conseils à la ville. Alors, le conseil, d'ailleurs, je dois mentionner, je ne suis plus présidente, malheureusement. C'est vraiment pour moi, c'est une grande changement dans ma vie, mais je ne suis plus présidente du Conseil des Montréalaises, mais je le tiens à cœur absolument. Mais le Conseil travaille sur les expériences des femmes qui vivent à Montréal, les conditions de travail pour les femmes dans la ville de Montréal, mais et aussi comment on gouverne le Montréal. Alors, je trouve que même ces trois axes, c'est intéressant à penser comment dans les autres instances décisionnelles, les autres paliers de gouvernement, on pourrait penser aussi à ces changements. Et finalement, je vais juste mentionner les recommandations du rapport de la Fondation canadienne des femmes qu'on avait fait avec d'autres groupes, incluant la municipalité canadienne des municipalités, vers une nouvelle normalité, genre intersectionnalité et leadership. Une des recommandations était de renforcer les déterminants sociaux de la participation civique. Et je pense surtout de ce qu'on parle aujourd'hui, ça c'est l'accessibilité, l'inclusivité, la diversité et le fait de continuer à la décolonisation du leadership et d'idées de qualification. Parce que ça aussi, c'est une grande barrière pour les femmes, l'idée qu'on n'est pas assez qualifié pour prendre ces postes, qui est fausse, puis on sait très bien que c'est faux, mais il faut quand même démystifier ce mythe, je pense, au sein de ces instances. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Anu. Sherry, you briefly mentioned this in your previous answer, but can you please tell us a bit more around what other countries are doing to improve balance of representation in their elected bodies?
Thank you, Arizu. Other countries are not relying on systems built by and for men centuries ago to magically evolve, as Chi already referred to. They recognize that it is critically important for women and equity deserving groups to be at the table, and that the systems in place are not conducive to that. And so they are implementing new systems. So, for example, let me just cite a few concrete examples. Mexico rewrote its constitution to ensure that women hold half the seats, effectively reflecting their presence in the population. What a concept! Not geography, but representation, true representation. Mexico also designates seats for people who identify as 2S LGBTQ. And a number of Latin American countries reserve seats for Indigenous peoples. This is democracy in action. New Zealand changed its electoral system. They had a very similar electoral system to Canada, first past the post, like the UK. They changed their system to proportional representation in the 1990s. And that's why, until the most recent election, they were tied with Mexico for number 4. They've now slipped in the most recent election, but women's representation in New Zealand has been demonstrably impacted by that shift. In fact, Canada is an outlier. Around the world, almost all of the countries ahead of us, if not all of them, do not have our first past the post system. They have proportional representation because they know that those systems deliver, by and large, more equitable outcomes. In fact, a number of our own political parties have promised to address this. It's easier to make the promise when you're not in office. Once you're in office, then, you know, it's not an easy thing to do, but it is something that we should certainly be looking at. Costa Rica, Norway, South Africa, 90 other countries all have implemented targets or quota systems because they not only work, but they actually, and this is important, they actually improve the quality and competency of elected officials. You know, when you talk about quotas or targets, people immediately think, oh no, we want the best people to run, as if the people who are already elected are the best people. And the truth is that, and I'll just give you one example, in Sweden, they implemented a quota system at the municipal level, and researchers went in and looked at the people who were elected, and they compared the data to 10 other elections. And what they determined was that the competency of elected officials improved because parties, when forced to run women, recruited really strong female candidates to run, and they replaced men who were not as strong, who did not have as much to offer. And so overall, the merit actually improved. And that's one of the things that is occurring when you are really deliberate about ensuring that space is made for voices that are not currently there.
Fantastic. And that's a perfect segue, Sherry, thank you, to the next question that I offer Aline. Speaking of voices that aren't often there or at all there, Aline, YWCA Canada milite activement en faveur du leadership des jeunes femmes. Comment un investissement dans les jeunes femmes contribue-t-il à équilibrer le pouvoir?
Merci Pam. La fédération YWCA met l'accent sur le leadership des jeunes dans tout ce que nous faisons. Et cela depuis notre création il y a plus de 150 ans. Fait amusant, les jeunes femmes votaient sur les résolutions de la YWCA avant de pouvoir voter aux élections fédérales canadiennes dans l'histoire. Donc, c'est vraiment pour vous montrer l'importance que ce sujet a au cœur de notre mouvement. Donc, le travail de YWCA Canada en matière d'investissement dans le leadership des jeunes femmes et des jeunes de genre diversifiés a toujours consisté à équilibrer le pouvoir, à donner aux jeunes femmes l'espace, les compétences, les outils et le soutien dont elles ont besoin pour assumer des rôles décisionnels, que ce soit en tant que leader au sein de nos conseils d'administration, par exemple au niveau national ou local ou même mondial, ou en tant que représentante élue. Donc, c'est vraiment quelque chose d'important pour nous. Et l'une des convictions fondamentales du mouvement YWCA Canada dans le monde entier est que lorsque les jeunes femmes et les filles, dans toute leur diversité, agissent en tant que leaders, que ce soit à la maison, à l'école ou au sein de leur communauté, ou au niveau national, leur leadership est profondément transformateur. Nous avons constaté cela, je crois qu'il y a beaucoup d'exemples mondialement où on voit les jeunes filles vraiment mener la lutte. Donc, si vous, tout le monde ici, si comme moi, vous êtes joints à cette conversation aujourd'hui, vous partagez, tout comme moi, le rêve d'un monde plus juste et plus équitable, et où la parité entre les genres en politique n'est pas juste une aspiration, hein, on le dit, ça prend trop longtemps, mais une réalité établie de longue date. On veut que ça soit une réalité. Et il n'est tout simplement pas possible. Moi, je ne vois pas comment on peut envisager ça sans une participation significative des jeunes femmes et un investissement authentique dans leur leadership. Donc, personnellement, moi, j'ai aussi des intérêts. Il s'agit de m'assurer que ma fille, qui est d'âge préscolaire, et mes belles-filles, qui sont Gen Z et milléniaux, aient aussi les mêmes possibilités d'occuper l'espace politique, si elles le veulent, de la même manière et de manière aussi équitable que mon garçon de 9 ans. Donc, je terminerai par ceci. Investir dans les jeunes femmes en tant que leader signifie également travailler à leur côté. Pas travailler pour elles, mais travailler à leur côté pour démanteler les structures de pouvoir qui les empêchent actuellement ou qui les inhibent en ce moment d'accéder à des rôles de leadership. Nous sommes vraiment impatients. Moi, j'ai hâte de travailler avec les élus actuels et les partenaires communautaires tels que tout le monde ici pour accomplir ce travail important. Merci beaucoup.
All right, so much to learn from literally every single panelist here. It's going to take me a while to digest all of it. But as we're talking about action, Senator Dasco, can you please share about your new bill, an act to amend the Canada Elections Act, and talk about how it can help move the needle on gender parity in politics? You're on mute, Senator.
So after all of my talking about political parties and the importance of getting more women elected, and now that I'm a senator, I'm certainly not going to miss the opportunity to try to do something along these lines. So I have introduced a bill just on the last day of our parliamentary session in December. Bill S-283. I see this as a foundational bill, an important step, something we can do now. This should be very easy. We start with the idea that diversity is a value. It's important. It's a positive value. As we said earlier, as we heard earlier, we want to have legislatures that look like Canada. And so how do we do this? Sherry talked about some measures that other countries have. We don't have anything. We have no measures whatsoever. We don't even have anything basic. And yet somehow Canada is considered a leader in diversity disclosure. That's because we have laws that deal with corporations. They have to disclose information. Political parties don't have to do anything. So this bill moves us along these lines. So if we want a parliament that reflects the diversity of the country, we have to start with high quality information about diversity and about the efforts that political parties are taking. So that's the premise of the bill. It involves two things. This is great to have an opportunity to preview it. Two things: data collection on the diversity of candidates. We don't have that right now. The Chief Electoral Officer has asked for these powers because he has no ability to collect this information. So now in this bill, he will have the opportunity and he will be able to collect this information. That is information on diversity of candidates in nomination races, candidates running, and candidates in leadership races for the political parties. So that's the first thing. The second part of the bill is the disclosure of action plans on the part of political parties. What are their plans? Do they have, first of all, how do they choose candidates? Tell Canadians how you choose candidates. Put this information on your websites. Tell us the rules. Tell us what you're doing with respect to any programs to advance diversity in your party, whatever they may be. Tell us what programs you have. Tell us what policies you have with respect to the selection of diverse candidates. Tell us if you have targets and timelines for advancing women. Tell us any rules you have about candidates running in key districts for your party. So this provision is modeled on the legislation we have now that requires corporations to tell and disclose this kind of information. You may have heard the term comply or explain. This is what governs corporations now. They have to tell Canadians what they're doing. Let's be clear, this is a transparency bill. It's about disclosing information. It's not a quota bill, as much as that may be needed, as Sherry has said. This is a transparency bill. The theory is if we can shine a light on the practices of political parties, then this will be a basis for progress. And we actually have seen progress when it comes to corporate activity on diversity when the corporations are required to disclose what they do, disclose their policies, we can see that we can make progress. So that is what I proposed, and I think it's very doable. It's, as I said, doesn't require parties to do anything. It just requires the parties to tell us what you're doing. And that in that way, we can actually move the dial in terms of getting more diverse candidates. So that's my plan. I put it on the table. I'm going to be launching it second reading when we get back in February. And I'm really hoping, I really think it's practical. And I think it's a really good foundational first step. So that's what I'm up to. And I'm really looking for support from my parliamentary colleagues and both sides, both houses of parliament. And that'll be the next step. And I'm really happy to be able to give a little summary here of what's there.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. We will.
So exciting.
So exciting.
Thank you.
We will do our best to share information about your bill. And thank you for your leadership. We will
Thank
pay
you.
close attention during this campaign. And yeah, stay tuned, I guess, eh?
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate
Well, thanks
it.
to all of the panelists. Merci à tous nos panélistes pour votre engagement, votre intervention très importante. On a quelques minutes pour choisir quelques questions. We initially wanted to spend more time on questions and answers with this fantastic panel. And we've seen some great questions come up in the Zoom chat and on Facebook. I think what we'll do, Arazu, is collect all their great questions and see if we can't provide some answers on social media over time after the event today. But maybe we'll do a couple now. We want to save enough time at the end of this event for a quick call to action. So I know, Arazu, you found one you wanted to start us with.
So here's a question from Danielle. Any of the panelists, please feel free to go ahead and respond if it resonates with you. What are some concrete ways that political parties can support women, people of color, and LGBTQA+ people to run in ridings where they have an excellent chance of winning a seat? How has this played out in places like BC or in other parts of the world where there is greater diversity in government?
Who wants to break the ice? Chi, go ahead, please.
I'll jump in on this one. I mean, I think that all the parties have opportunities to ensure that their candidate slates are diverse, and we can remind parties that that is a way we can endorse and support them if it's a value that really aligns for you. I do want to talk about the retention piece because I saw that as well in the chat, and having spoken to some women of color in elected office, the additional weight of feeling like they have to speak on behalf of their communities all the time, in addition to just showing up as an elected representative. You know, these are not systems that have been designed to be gentle and kind to elected leaders, but we should be demanding that they turn towards that. If we want to continue to retain talented leaders in our systems, some of those voices who bring different lived experience to the table. And I think we've seen when we have that gender parity that we can have a shift in how politics is done. I had a chance to spend some time in the Northwest Territories, and you know, they had a legislature of 53% women. So an extraordinary achievement led by a woman premier. And you know, that models a different approach to this. And something that we're doing in our campaign schools very intentionally is thinking about the multi-partisanship, creating bridges. Canadians want to see political leaders cooperate. It's a sign of, you know, trust in our communities that our leaders can get along and do the right things for all of us. And I think that's a disruption piece that we're really interested in the political system, is doing politics a bit differently. So when you land in the system, if you are from a racialized perspective or have that experience or live with disabilities, that you're bringing that and you have some safety in the space. It's never entirely safe for anyone, but we can do more to ensure that that is the condition of work for people. So parties can make sure that they're doing that as well by really thinking about the equity opportunities and how they receive and support candidates through that process. I certainly felt supported through that as a woman of color when I ran with the party that I ran with, but different measures can certainly support that. And incentivize more engagement. And those signals from political party executives make a difference as well.
Thank you, Chi. Any other panelists want to weigh in on that question from Danielle? Yes, Senator, please go ahead.
Thank you. I want to give others a chance to speak too, but just on the topic of what parties can do, and I think I see some comments in the chat. Federal New Democrats have a policy whereby when a riding comes open, they are required to do a search for women or diverse candidates when those ridings come up. That is non-incumbent ridings. You know, when a riding opens up for them. So that is one example of a policy practice that a party has whereby they reach out. And I think you can see in the chat, there's certainly the data supports the fact, and you know, I'm a nonpartisan person. I'm an independent senator. I don't belong to any party, but I just want to say that this policy has resulted in more women and more diverse candidates for that party. So as an example of a practice that a party can take on. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you. What a shame that we won't have time for more questions live now during the event. But we want to assure you that we are collecting them and we'll make good use of our social media to carry this conversation forward. And we would hope that all of you will join us there on Balance the Power social media channels to keep this engaging, dynamic conversation going. Our panelists have given us so much today to think about and so much motivation. I know Arezou agrees. We've been chatting off to the side about, oh my, so much good material. If only we had more time, but we promised you a 75-minute event and we'd really like to honor that commitment. Panelists, thank you so much. Vous avez nous donné tellement d'histoires et d'idées aujourd'hui inspirantes pour lancer notre vague de changement politique pour de bon. And I know everyone participating on the live stream on Zoom joins me and Arezou in thanking you very much for your generous gift of time and insights today on this panel. We invite you now to close your cameras, and Arezou and I are going to move us into a quick call to action before we wrap up the event. Over to you, Arezou.
All right, so even though we've wrapped up the panel, the event goes on. We have an exciting kind of activity we want to go through with all of you. The whole point of today, as we mentioned in the panel, is to take action and let politicians and decision makers know that they are the ones with the power to make gender equity in politics a reality. So let's tell them together. Right now, we're gonna, on our laptops, on our phones, we're gonna let them know what's up. So on your computer or your smart device, on your phone, on your iPad, open up balancethepower.ca. So it's the campaign's website. Once you've gone to balancethepower.ca, you can scroll down on the homepage to where it says take action. Tell political leaders that this issue matters to you. It's a button, I think. Yes. So as you can see on the screen, you should click on the button that says email your representatives and follow the steps to finish the action. So as you can see on the screen, You can take a minute right now to take action and tell your MPs, political leaders, people in charge know that this is an issue that matters to you.
That's right. This is an amazing tool that we're using, which allows you to enter your postal code and automatically send an email at the same time to your local municipal representative, your provincial or territorial representative, and your federal elected representative. So we are all together today. We can really make some noise in real time. Pour que les politiciennes en prennent note, agissons ensemble en temps réel aujourd'hui, maintenant. S'il vous plaît, ouvrez équilibronslepouvoir.ca on your smartphone, on your iPad, any device in front of you. Sur notre page d'accueil, cliquez sur le bouton « Envoyer un courriel à vos élus » et suivez les étapes. We should also say, Arazu, while they're on our website, please make sure you're subscribed to our e-bulletins so you're in the loop on everything to do with this campaign. Pendant que vous êtes sur notre page d'accueil, abonnez à nos bulletins électroniques pour être au courant du contenu et des outils motivants que nous préparons pour vous. We have no way of monitoring what you folks are up to right now in real time. We also have this fun idea to play our Balance the Power playlist on Spotify while you're taking collective action. Arazu, what is your favorite song for empowerment or to get you motivated about a campaign?
Honestly, anything by Beyonce at this point. I just feel like play her whole, like go on like Apple Music and play Beyonce Essentials. That's my girl power anthem like playlist.
Well, that's great. You called out a modern 21st century icon. I go to the oldies but goodies, my Aretha Franklin and some Motown. You know, it pumps me up and it gets me going. But as we know, all movements for change have a soundtrack. So we invite you to add to our collective playlist on Spotify. Well,
someone just commented, "This girl is on fire." I remember hearing Kathleen Wynne walk to that song. It was iconic, and nothing beats it.
I love me some Alicia Keys. Fantastic. So we'll see you all on Spotify as well after this event. But to honor our time, we want to conclude here, wrap everything up. On behalf of my fabulous co-host and panel moderator, Arazu, thank you for helping us launch this collective wave. And also on behalf of the Balance the Power team, please open your cameras and reveal yourselves as I introduce you. Ashna, Haley, Eleanor, Mabel, Samantha, and Sherry. It's a dream team. On behalf of all of us, thank you sincerely for joining us today to launch Balance the Power. With all of you engaging and mobilizing, promoting and amplifying, our political leaders won't have a choice but to sign the pledge. Nous ne pourrions être plus enthousiastes à l'idée de faire campagne avec vous. Merci aussi aujourd'hui à Daniel et Jean de Coop Largo pour l'interprétation simultanée, à Brooke Nanskivel et Monique Rochelot pour l'interprétation en langue de signes, et à tout le monde, encore une fois. Merci d'avoir participé aujourd'hui à ce lancement. À bientôt